Back to the Land Festival, but we have some great videos to show you, so let's get to it. Good morning. So we are at Nunnally United. Let me see if I can get the sign back there. I think that's the sign right there. Nunnally United Methodist Church in Nunnally, Tennessee. Isn't this a cute little church? It's just really neat looking. So to close out the Back to the Land Festival, I know I keep spinning around, I'm sorry. To close out the Back to the Land Festival, we are going to build a community garden here at this church. So they've got one raised bed built right there. We're going to build 3 more and hopefully provide some way for this church to help their community with food, which is really awesome. So if I can get some shots, we're going to be working a lot this morning. If I can get some shots, I will. But yeah, it's been a great weekend and I can't wait to share some of the highlights with you. So right now we're leveling up, by we I mean they, we're leveling up the ground to put boxes. This box has already been built and they're gonna add 3 more boxes right here. They've already got that one planted with greens and radishes and stuff, so that's cool. It's even already coming up.
It seems like we're digging so fast. Yeah. We had a long board to see how far I think we're not going to worry about time at all.
That's 4 footer.
Long, a half inch. It's going to be imperceptible, right?
Yes. It's almost.
A half inch over 10 feet is not going to make anybody unhappy, is it? Yeah. Yeah. So it'll act like
Darren, there.
Oh, all right, thank you. Usually I got
A pouch.
belt full of screws.
Yeah.
Hey y'all, thanks everybody for coming out. Okay, so what the idea is to do like a hugel / raised bed. The 2 can overlap. Now keep in mind, when you put wood in the bottom of it, it's going to zap a little bit of your nitrogen for the first couple of years. But because these boxes are so deep, you can get over that. So the idea is we're going to lay the wood down. Anybody not under, I'll just explain what a hugel is. When you do a hugel culture, hugel mound, the idea is that all those dead and dying carbon sources are going to wick water. So the idea is to ultimately get to the point where you don't even have to water. So we'll put the wood down first. It's going to wick moisture out of this soil. Then we're going to cover that up with soil. And we're not going to go to the top of the box. We're going to go about as high as this first year. You could go just as high as this first board if you wanted. Because over the winter, they'll probably, what are you going to put, a cover crop in of something? Turnips and stuff like that, so it'll be a cover crop. So they could harvest it, throw all the greens down, and then sheet mulch from here up. You got so many different options. Sheet mulching meaning we lay down 2 layers of cardboard, and depending on what you want to do, you can put down some compost, then you can put down a carbon layer. It could even be those leaves over there. And then later on, you know, put cylinders and put plant starch. We'll demonstrate how you can do a instant garden, which is, by the way, the quickest way to build soil in this kind of environment without animals. You can build as much as a ½ inch of soil per year. We've actually done 1 inch, and we'll show you how to do that. I can open it. Just go ahead and dump them in.
I don't like the 2-wheel thing. I ain't somebody
I haven't either.
We'll shoot for the bottom board. We'll shoot for the top of the bottom board. I'm not sure.
And that's mushroom compost?
Yeah, it looks good, but
Looks like it grows those dead sticks.
what's that?
Looks like it grows those dead sticks.
Yeah.
It's just black.
Well, these days when you do compost, here's how you know what's compost and what isn't. This stuff's a little wet. This is what a lot of people don't realize. I'm gonna show y'all right here. Big trick. You know if you got compost in there or not. If you can take a handful of that soil, rub it on your hands. Whatever's stuck to your hands is all that's compost. The rest of it The rest of it is becoming compost. That's all the compost there is. But everybody thinks that all this is compost. That's really not. The only thing that's... If this stuff wasn't wet, you could really tell it.
So that stuff that's left on your hands, is that like the nutrients?
That's exactly.
Okay.
That's the heavy lifters, the stuff you see left on my hands.
Okay.
And then a lot of stuff, if you buy this stuff from most municipalities, believe it or not, y'all want to test this stuff because 80 to 90% of the time, if you buy that stuff from a regular composting producing place, about 80% of the time there is no nitrogen in that stuff.
Wow.
It'll have phosphorus and some of the other stuff, but they're putting it out so fast these days, there's almost no nitrogen. So you want to test it. You can get a little kit, like a $10 kit, and believe it or not, they work pretty well. So if you don't have nitrogen, I'm going to show y'all what to do. Now, if this is all you have available to you, go with it. Because there's ways to amend it that'll make it perfect. And we're going to show you how to do that.
So this isn't going to be getting any oxygen here shortly. So now it's anaerobic, right?
No, not necessarily. If you put a cover crop in here, that's going to solve all the problems.
All right.
Yeah. But you're right. If we left it alone,
And put topsoil on top of this.
it would, you'd start making dangers for yourself. Yeah. Really, I shouldn't be standing in this because it's wet and I'm compacting it. Let's do this stuff. Once I took my gloves off, believe it or not, every time you put your hands in that soil, we've become such an antiseptic society that we're afraid to put our hands in the soil. Now I understand if you get your nails done and stuff like that, that's an issue. But this is a way of grounding yourself. Every time you do this, it's called grounding. Yeah. Well, you're gonna find out. You're gonna find out when you do this, you put your hands in this, you'll sleep better that night than any other night.
We should be walking around in our bare feet too.
You should.
We ground.
That's what all your senses. I mean, we found out. It's
Yeah.
been studied. Here, I'll help you.
You want to go phone? I don't know where you want it. Very good.
I think you got enough of this.
Things.
I brought the hard rake.
Kill it. Tugging on his feet, fucked up. He got wires wrapped around his big toe when he said he was drunk from the night. Put this one go up here. Get over here. We're doing mulching compost first, right? Into the
Topsoil first and then mulching compost.
Okay. Yeah, we have one bag.
I think we're going to keep those to demonstrate the sheet.
Yeah. So
It's up to you.
You want to demonstrate the rest stuff in there?
We can throw the rest of that in the bed.
That'll help it start breaking down them sticks.
Yeah, might as well do that. The only reason I was saying the topsoil is like use fill dirt for like 75% of your bed and then layer it with the top 25% of compost. The worms will make that change, and you save money on compost if you're buying.
Good. Yeah, we got enough to do. Probably make.
You got enough people to lift the part up? Well, if you put the egg covering, yeah. You got enough to lift
Everybody get on it.
Yeah, this is what community looks like.
1, 2, 3. There you go. Hey.
Good job.
Beauty. Daddy, was that your idea?
Woo! There you you go.
You know how long that would have taken by shovel?
I know, right?
I know exactly how long.
If anybody knows, you know, right?
Yeah, what we're going to do is use it as a mulch.
Okay. Like kind of on top.
Yeah, we were going to go ahead and... Okay, raised beds are cool. That's a quicker way to get it done. But if you have, let's say, nothing more than the ground we're standing on, and you want to make a garden tomorrow, it's really this easy. So, first thing you're going to want to do is find the spot. And it can be as big as that piece of cardboard. We've demonstrated it a number of times on our YouTube channel. And this is made popular by the genius Jeff Lawton, who William trained under in Australia. It's really nothing more than sheet mulching, but there's a couple of ways you can go about it. Best, if you have hard ground like this, to go ahead and hit it with a broad fork. In the area, everybody know what a broad fork is? Or
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
No?
No.
Okay, it's basically a fork that's about yay wide, has these tongs in the bottom of it. You stand on it, and it has two handles, and you'll pull it down to the ground. And all it's going to do is loosen it up. If you have a tiller, and you can do it, that's fine too. So you only want to till once. You only have to till once, and that's the first time. So even if you don't have that, it's really, y'all are going to think I'm crazy, but it's really this simple. You can take your cardboard, if you can. You can even use a shovel and double dig if you want. Just loosen it up, okay? Now, to make an instant garden, it's really this simple. Take a piece of cardboard, you want to get it sopping wet. As wet as you could possibly get it. Because if you don't, it's going to wick the moisture out of your seeds and out of your ground. So let's just pretend we watered this down. I don't want to do it because we're going to need to move it. And plus that hose is plumb over there, so we don't want to stretch that out. We're going to take a carbon source. In this case, we're going to use leaves. You're going to want to pile these about a foot thick. Now we're going to replicate this in these raised beds. And folks, people ask why we don't weed. This is why. We don't weed ever. We sheet mulch. And it's going to save you a ton of time. Let me get a little bit more in there. And you're probably going to wonder when this is all said and done why nobody is doing this. Everybody's heard, or most people probably heard of sheet mulching, right? Lasagna gardening, same thing, right? Okay. So, you got some seeds? Anybody? Matt?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take this topsoil. You can buy this stuff. This is the only thing you got to buy in this whole thing, y'all. Cardboard comes easy, comes cheap. Matt, you got some seeds for me?
Yep.
Let me just kind of explain the mechanics here. This works better, by the way.
Really good about I got turnips, radishes, and kale. Those are probably our best bets for this.
Okay.
This late.
We're going to tear this down, so I'm not going to get too crazy with it. We want these leaves. Leaves will work, okay? It's best if you have hay or straw. It could be spent hay, it could be spent straw. You want to make sure it didn't have any. If it has junk in it, William, tell them what happens if they do have junk in the hay and straw.
Are you talking about the Grazon?
Well, yeah, try to avoid that.
Well, if you can't find like hay or straw, it'll be all right because in the composting, the toxins are going to get locked up in medium and long chain carbonic acid, so they'll go inert. They're still there, but they'll just go inert. Like the heavyweight champion, if he's in a straight jacket, you can't. Same thing with this.
It'll be there, but that's how awesome nature is, y'all. Is that it's there, but it's not in your food. As long as you compost it, and this is always composting. So it can be leaves, but it's best to use straw or hay if you can get it. Now, all we're going to do at this point, let's pretend we got a garden. Let's say this is whatever this is, okay? I'm literally going to do this. I'm going to make a little cylinder in there with my hand, right? And I'm going to take my knife. This is critical. Like, remember, this is wet, y'all. I'm going to take my knife. I'm going to cut an X in the bottom of that cardboard, right? Make sure you access the soil underneath. And then all we're going to do, we're going to fill that cylinder. Make sure that at least a little bit of this is touching the bottom of that cardboard. And I'll show you how to turbocharge this if you want. Okay, everybody see that little cylinder there? Mm-hmm. Okay, depending on my cultivar, depending on what my cultivated variety is, okay, in this case we got, it looks like some kind of,
I think they're just daikons.
okay, these are radishes.
They're daikons, white icicle radishes,
Okay.
and turnips.
Now, it's typically going to work best if you have plant starts, okay? That's typically how it's going to work best. But I got a seed here. I'm going to stick it down in there. That's it. So I'll go ahead and do another one right here. Get down to the bottom, cut my X. Bam, bam. And I kid you not, this will build, just by doing what I did here. When I say building soil, does everybody know what that means? I'll just kind of give you the thumbnail version.
Dirt to something that'll grow something.
That's right. And exactly what's going to happen here, we just made with this cardboard. Everybody kind of got the idea because I'm going to tear it down and show you what's happening. The taxonomy of what's happening in this soil is now all of the worms, which you may or may not see, they're in this soil. I guarantee it, and probably in small amounts. Considering the compaction, there probably ain't a whole lot. But what we just did with that cardboard, especially whatever you do when you get cardboard, be sure to take off the plastic, any tape, anything you got like that. But you see these little things right here, those little nodules down through there, you just made super highways for all those worms that are down in there. So wet that stuff down, and then here's the way to turbocharge it. And I gave you the simplest way, but here's the way to turbocharge what I just did. If you have raw manure, wet your, broad fork it, till your ground, put down raw manure. The worms love it. If you doubt me, go look at whatever animals you have and then look at the piles they leave behind. If you're not giving them graze on or anything like that, guarantee there's worms underneath those patties, okay? Unless you're feeding them stuff they shouldn't have. So, worms are gonna do all this for you. They're basically gonna take this soil. If you have a live soil, you will have to do this every time you plant. So, let's translate this over to what we're gonna do, not in this bed, but that one right there. So let's say you got a raised bed like that. You could just go ahead and take all these seeds, scatter them in there, let them come up, and then if you want, go ahead and kind of dress everything with a mulch, okay? You don't have to, because what I would do, if that were mine, what I would do is go ahead and put down a cover crop. When I say a cover crop, you're gonna want a lot of legumes in there. And what it's doing is adding structure. Even though you put, let's say, decent compost in there, it's adding structure to the soil. And what I'm gonna do, when it's long in the tooth, I'm gonna chop and drop it. I'm gonna chop it off. I'm not gonna yank it out, folks. Unless you got a root crop, don't pull anything out of your soil. Leave it in there. Let it compost. It'll build more structure, make more homes for the worms. Chop and drop it, and then when spring rolls around, I'm ready to rock and roll.
Do you want to chop and drop that like before it goes to seed? Before it gets a seed head on it?
You typically do, because you want it to spend all of its energy down in that soil. Okay. But we do both.
Okay.
Like probably one of the videos we'll do this week when we get back. I don't know if anybody's seen it or not, but up on the side of our mountain, we had nothing but thorns and thickets. We ran the pigs through. They knocked it down. We threw in a cover crop. It outcompeted all the weeds for pioneer species, right?
Terrace first.
I'm sorry?
The terrace first.
Oh yeah, we got a terrace put in, but still, if we left it alone, everything that would come back would look just like you see it back there. Briars and thickets, okay? When you see briars and thickets, you know you got jacked up soil, bottom line. So, you put in that cover crop. It's in there right now. There are almost no weeds at all because you want a strong, robust cover crop that'll outcompete those weeds. So, we'll knock that down. We'll put another succession. Okay, what time of year is it? It's fall, right? So that buckwheat and cowpea that I have ain't gonna make it. But it did put all those root structures down in the soil, improving my taxonomy, creating a home for those worms and all the beneficial microorganisms. So I'll go ahead and, when we get done, when I chop and drop that, I'm gonna put down another cover crop. Anybody got an idea what that might be? Clover. There you go. Clover, because I need nitrogen in that soil, okay? Am I missing anything, son? Okay. So if you're on a regular ground, like I said, if you don't have the access to wood or any of that stuff, we do this as a syntropic design within our food forest and within our orchards. We put it right on the ground. And the life we saw in one season is astonishing, just doing this in jacked up soil that was played out in every kind of way imaginable. So now let's go ahead and translate Any questions on this before we move on?
Also, it works so well that you can do it on top of like gravel driveways and parking lots and stuff like that.
Yes. It works so good that you can literally do this. All that rock we pulled out of there, you will literally grow soil on rock. Check out the work of Dr. Elaine Ingham. She is probably the biggest genius on this planet when it comes to soil. And honestly, we do it. We're growing soil. We haven't made that video yet, but we are growing soil on rock. And all of the acids, all of the sugars, all of those things inside those nitrogen fixers are breaking down that rock and making it bioavailable to the things you really want. How cool is that, y'all?
It's pretty cool.
Good Lord provided all this for us, huh? So here we go. We're gonna do something here. Because before I move on, any questions on this?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
When you're talking about building soil, so every year, like you've got this little plot right here, are you just going to come back next year and put more cardboard and more stuff and build on top? Is that what you're talking about building?
That's why we don't weed. That's why we never.
And the cardboard, by the next season, if your soil is alive, the cardboard will be gone.
Okay.
You will see, and now if you screwed up like I did and got lazy one time, only remnants that you'll see are the tape, because I was like, man, let's just get it done. I knew better, and it was stupid, and I did it anyway. You can double and triple that up, that cardboard, but take the tape off of there, folks. I know it's a pain, but if you don't, you're gonna wish you did, because all of a sudden, when the worms make that exchange, you're gonna find tape sticking up out of your soil everywhere. Okay. So don't be lazy.
I've actually, I work at the post office. I don't know if anybody can do this, if it was just me, but they get these great big gaylords for Amazon that I can take home those gaylords with me. No tapes, no staples or anything. All you gotta do is break that bind, and it's huge. It's a good 20-foot span.
Cool.
Straight cardboard.
Excellent. Excellent. Also, refrigerator places, they got them. Appliances. Oh, let me show you one more application, y'all. Let me kind of put this back together. So let's say you got carrots. You typically plant them in rows, right? You do the same thing here. Don't worry about making each individual cylinder. Here's what you do.
How do you just make a whole row?
Just make a line of it. Put it in there. And then as soon as them carrots and stuff start coming up, start inching this stuff around. Just put you a little bit of bead. It only got to be like 2 inches thick. It ain't got to be, well.
Still got to slit the cardboard.
There you go. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I plumb forgot to. Now, carrots are going to be a little bit tricky in the first season. Anything that needs to go into the roots is going to be tricky that first season, because it needs to go down in there. But you can do it. We've done it. You can do it in these beds. That's why I'm mentioning carrots. Potatoes. You do potatoes on the ground like this. You could. Darren, was it you that took the potatoes and laid them on the ground and covered them up with soil?
Well, I put them in tires.
There you go.
But yeah, it's the same thing. Everything's above ground.
You can do it all above ground.
Yeah, it'll crawl down in there.
So there we go. Any more questions on this, y'all? All right, so now we'll translate this. Now let's say you got a raised bed at the house. Like I said, y'all, we do not weed. I'm already not good at mundane tasks anyway, and weeding ain't helping me. I just don't, look, I ain't weeding. I'm not weeding. So, and you don't have to. Check this out, y'all. Even if you got weeds, let's say weeds are popping up out of the sides. It doesn't matter. Use those weeds.
Chop and drop.
Exactly. You're covering them up. You're still doing the same thing. So let's say we got this bed right here. Okay, option A. For this season, what I would prefer to do, now be careful when you got carbon like this, or when you add any dressing to your soil, please folks, I don't know why I see everybody doing this, but you're gonna kill yourself doing it. If you add compost to anything, always add it to the surface. Why? Because that's how nature does it. All these leaves are gonna be off these trees. Like William said yesterday in his composting class, all those leaves, if nobody rakes them up, are gonna be on the ground. By this time next year, you'll never know that a leaf was on that ground, right? That's how we compost. Now that's why hugelkultur is kind of counterintuitive. Because where in nature do you see wood fall and then soil comes on top of it?
Right.
It doesn't happen.
Right.
So the whole reason hugelkultur was even invented or used was to take wood that you can't take to the market and have a way to make something useful out of it. So keep in mind, remember how we put the sticks down first? That's going to rob your soil for the first couple of years. Could be up to 5 years depending on, but y'all got small sticks. But because these beds are so thick, it ought to mitigate a lot of that. So what I would do this first year is cast seeds, if it was my bed, and I'd let a cover crop come up, right? So, okay, so your cover crop's up. Let's say you don't want to chop and drop it. Now imagine we got, oh shoot, let's just say it's a cover crop of nitrogen fixers and a number of other things sticking up. And let's say it's about that high. You got a bunch of clover in there, right? Yeah. All right, I could go ahead and take a scythe, chop it down, do all that stuff. Or I ain't got to mess with any of it. Let's say there's weeds in there. It doesn't even matter. Let's say you didn't have time. Let's say you had dad in the hospital and you couldn't, it got away from you. That happens to all of us, right? So let's say this is all weeds. Just worry about getting them off the edge here. Cover it up with cardboard, just like so. There, who said that? There you go. Soak it. In fact, if you can soak it before you stick it in here, it's better. So if you had a wheelbarrow filled with water, it works better that way. Take it, fold it up, do whatever you got to do, cut it in pieces, stick it in the wheelbarrow, let it get really, really saturated. Pull it out. Okay, it's best to do it that way, but I'll be honest with you, I don't always do that. I'll just stick it just like this. The reason why is because we live in a temperate rainforest. Where we live, it rains so much I don't have to worry about this, okay? So, we got a cover crop. We're gonna imagine there's cardboard all the way up and down here, okay? So, now here's where we're gonna do our instant garden here. We're really not changing much. Ideally, we're gonna want straw or hay. Now, see how high these leaves are? If I just did nothing more than that, it is going to be more than adequate, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and demonstrate it all the way so everybody gets it. Now I guess I could ask for help.
Yeah.
And you know how far you're going with each task.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna show y'all how high I actually put it.
Can you help?
No.
Okay.
We're there now. Thanks. I'm gonna do the same exact thing. I'm gonna use plant starts that I had in my greenhouse. It doesn't matter. Do the same thing. Make a cylinder. Let me grab more of this.
You're still gonna cut into your cardboard?
Yep. Make
Okay.
a cut. You know what? Go ahead and demonstrate that. Now, when that's wet, it's twice as hard, even with a razor blade, to get through it. Cut an X. Push it down a little bit.
You go through both layers?
Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to use a lot more because I got leaves here, but you're going to use a quarter of the amount if you use straw or hay. Believe me, there's plenty of farmer out there that's more than willing to give you some spent hay. They want it off their property, and they are glad to give it to you, I guarantee you. Like down there with your operation, you got a lot of spent hay?
Some.
Now, you're probably going to use it, but
Yeah,
ordinarily, if somebody said, I'll get that spent hay off your hands, you'd probably give it to them, right?
I never heard of spent hay.
It's a southern thing. It's
Oh,
it's
well,
hay that's rotten.
Oh, okay.
Rotten hay.
You move those round bales of hay, if somebody puts them outside, it leaves a layer. It
Sorry
kills the
about
grass.
that. Yeah, hey William, hey, come here for a sec. The if you have a cylinder, okay, so our cylinders are probably what, half that or quarter when we do it in straw and hay.
Yeah, it's like it's my handful.
So let's say, here's a cool thing about doing it in a bed, y'all. Let's say it's potatoes, right? Let's say your spacing's supposed to be 18 inches, right? Check out the work of a guy named John Jevons. Probably a number of y'all probably heard of him. He wrote a book called Growing More Food Than You Ever Thought Possible or something like that. Instead of going 18 inches and robbing yourself, okay, now think about it a different way. So instead of just putting a line here, putting a space between them, if I got 18 inches, right? Why sit here and rob myself a whole nother 18 inches when I can meet it halfway instead of putting a cylinder here, and then a whole nother row plumb over to here? Why not meet it halfway in the triangle?
Yep.
Put me a cylinder here, right?
Common, yeah.
So now I'm growing a third more vegetables in the same space. And the cool thing about doing it like in a deep bed, in a deep box like this, is that your root crops, things that need a lot of space, it's perfect because now all of a sudden they can work down. They're not having to work out like if I showed you on the ground there. So you can get there with that. Am I missing anything?
Well, also, and this took me way too long to figure this out, but whenever a packet or a bag of seeds or something like that says 18 inches, that's 18 inches on center. So it's actually 9 inches from either side. It took me forever to figure that out.
Right,
Yeah.
and nobody's telling you that on the seed packets. So you could actually, let's say you didn't want to do anything through the winter.
Also, you can do your spacing closer in these raised beds as well because the roots can go down instead of, oh, you did?
Yeah, I just mentioned that.
Sorry, yeah.
It's all good. Yeah. So let's say you didn't want to do anything for the winter. Let's say you didn't want to do anything for the winter. If you can, folks, you're going to save your own world. The reason why you want to also put them cover crops in, what do we put in the very bottom, y'all? Wood, sticks. It's pure carbon.
So you need to put nitrogen back in.
There you go. That
Yeah.
nitrogen is going to go a long way in helping to offset what you just lost in carbon, okay? But you're getting the wicking ability. So in a bed like this with all those sticks, you should, depending on where you are, you're going to water considerably less. Now, if this was me, let's say, hey, I got to go. Let's say some of y'all are some pretty wealthy folks and you got like a summer home somewhere.
Yeah, not happening. I don't know who you thought you were talking to, but yeah.
I got my summer home's over there in Darren's place up near Nebraska. So, yeah, I don't want to be there in the winter, that's for sure. So let's say you're one of them highfalutin folks that has one of those. Or let's just say you don't have time. Even if you don't have time to put in the cover crop, put mulch down.
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor and put mulch down. If nothing else, the worms, even though you're not there, the worms are working this. They're going down in here. We didn't broad fork the bottom of this, but this could be the most fertile doggone place around here.
And then also with your cardboard, back over there off topic, if you guys use your cardboard, you can do up to 3 feet of cardboard before the space between the cardboard and the existing soil goes anaerobic. So don't just stick to one sheet of cardboard, go a couple thick. Up to 3 feet if you want.
So y'all, you'll never, I don't know why the gardeners on TV, I don't know why nobody talks about this, but honestly, we don't weed. I mean,
they get funded by Scots.
Right?
There you have it.
It's all about the money.
There you have it.
That's on the internet now. You're never going to be able to take that.
Guess we'll never get a sponsorship from them.
You just called them out.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
So there you go, folks. I mean, there's leaves will do because they're ubiquitous. I mean, they're everywhere this time of year. And we use leaves now in our chicken tractor on steroids. I mean, if anybody wants to replicate that. So there's a, well,
if you grow bamboo leaves are really good for the silica in the bamboo leaves. If anybody has like any running bamboo or clumping bamboo and stuff like that, that's really good for them as well. You can use that as a mulch. You can use whatever dry carbon you want as a mulch.
and if you get that store-bought, have y'all tested this, Matt? It's okay, but let's assume 9 times out of 10 when you go buy compost, folks, I'm telling you, there was Sean the Modern Yeoman. I went out to his place and I'm looking at everything. It's all yellow. I was like, dude, you ain't got no nitrogen in that soil. He says, no, we do. We guaranteed it. We got mushroom compost and it came out on a dump truck. They dumped it. He tested it. There wasn't any nitrogen or phosphorus, but it looked as black as the most volcanic stuff out there. They're even putting dye in that stuff these days. Anybody heard of Mike Adams, the health ranger?
Yeah.
Okay, Mike Adams, he was testing this stuff. That a lot of this compost is coming from water treatment facilities. And remember how William said in the composting process, it'll tie up all those toxins? That's true.
To an extent.
To an extent, exactly. To an extent, but when you're using, and like he said, also the not vitamins, but the the stuff people are taking, medications and stuff like that. Yeah, it's making its way through there in such high quantity that now Mike is over there testing this, and he's got one killer lab to test it all. And the stuff they're finding in that store-bought compost over the last year, has everybody kind of noticed everything kind of breaks down real easy if you buy it off the shelf in most places? Well, they're doing the same thing with this compost. But here's the cool thing. If you have to get it, you can amend it and make it fantastic. Because we bought jacked up compost. When we first got there, we didn't make it all. But all you have to do, if you can make your own compost or even do things like this where it's composting in place, you're building soil, and worms are doing it all for you. So this is working with nature. So all we're doing, in a nutshell, y'all, there's 7 layers of a forest, right? Okay, if you didn't know, there are. If you look over here, you got an overstory, you got an understory, you got a shrub layer, you got an herbaceous layer, you got ground cover, you got vines, you also have roots. 7 layers. I'm going to submit to you that there's 8, and it should have been all along, and that's your mycelial layer. You're replicating all 8 layers of a forest. They say there's 7, but I'm telling you there's 8. You're taking all of that. You're taking everything you see out there in those woods, y'all, and putting it into your garden by doing it this way. How cool is that? That's all you're doing. You're just taking what God. This is what Paul Gauci, the Back to Eden guy, y'all heard of him?
Mm-hmm.
Extraordinary guy. All he did was walked out in the woods, looked there, and said, okay, we're just going to do the same thing here. And that's what we're doing, y'all. But you can do it in your garden, you can do it in your orchards, like even on the ground when you have your animals run through. You're doing it there to some extent. You're always, ABC, always be composting, y'all.
I have a question about if you're using straw or hay, because I've done wood chips. I use a lot of leaves. I use cut grass. But I did bring in some straw last year, and then I watched a video, and I think it was the Pioneer woman, Jill Winger, and she actually talked about an experience she had where she had somehow gotten straw that had been sprayed with some kind of herbicide.
Yeah, he was talking about that Grazon.
How do you know what you're getting?
You pretty much have to ask.
Get it from an individual.
Yeah.
Buying it from.
Or
Harvest it yourself.
Don't buy it from a
there's that, but let's say, look at what's ubiquitous around you. Just like, man, who's that old timer that taught that class on the wild foraging? Genius. Randall. Guy's a flipping genius. Thanks, y'all, for bringing this dude out. If you came for no other reason, he was worth it.
2 weeks or 3 weeks ago.
That guy is astonishing. But look at, going back to your question, to your point, okay, so even in this area, look around it. Okay, maybe they spray this lawn, right? So is it something you want to use? Maybe not. Whether or not, I mean, I'm looking around, they might spray it. But where are they not spraying? Right out there in those woods, on the edge of the woods, these leaves. So use those as much as you can. You know what? You could take that, where's that, that mower with a bagger on it? Yeah. No, we don't need it. You could just run it right over them leaves. It's going to chop them up. It's halfway composted right there, y'all. And honestly,
the carbon also, if you do mow your grass and stuff like that, or if you're mowing weeds or like even garden weeds and stuff like that, if you mow it and then let it sit until it's brown, it's now a carbon. It's no longer because the nitrogen was lost to the atmosphere.
That's what I've been doing a lot more of that because I got scared when I saw that, and I've been using it for other things.
Right.
The chickens love the chicken.
So even if it's a cover crop, that's number one. If you can't do a cover crop, carbon, y'all. But do not leave that soil bare, or the weeds or pioneer species are going to take over. It's going to happen every time. Anything else? Anybody got any questions?
Oh, what about the seeds? And like you were talking about using hay, what about the seeds?
Good question. Good question. Now,
what? Plant hay grass.
Absolutely. So you got hay seeds, right? You could take a little. This is a pain in the butt to do it this way, but you could take a little hardware cloth. I have a brother that actually does this. You can take some hardware cloth, stick it over your wheelbarrow. That's what you're doing. Essentially, you're going to thrash it right there and get whatever you out. But you know what? I don't even worry about it. You know why?
You put cardboard on top.
That's right.
Because the next time you're going to put cardboard over it.
And so I don't even mess with it. I used to go through this and like, good night, man.
Because I was sitting here thinking, how do you keep all those weeds out? But then I guess you're going to put another layer of cardboard the next time you plant. So.
Now, you make a really good point, because as your productive stuff is coming up, those hay seeds are going to come up too. But typically, they're not that big a problem. But I try to go with where I live. I can get pretty good hay and straw. We got a lot of weirdos around us, and despite the things that I think are weird, they know how to grow good hay and straw, so I can get clean stuff. But not all of us. Like if you're in Kentucky, you probably got a lot of straw and hay that you can't use because of Grazon. Alabama, same thing. It's tough to come by. Mississippi, in the deep south, a lot of us. I grew up there. It's going to be hard to find. But every once in a while, you'll find some old boy that had nothing but a fallow field that went,
Yeah.
and you can find it. You can find it. But
You
it's
just
tough.
got to know who you're getting it from and, just ask them.
I also try to ask and call a lot at feed stores because, like, I want to start putting it out there that, like, I'm not going to buy your product if it has that crap in it anymore.
There you
So
go.
I think that'd be good if everybody does that. Is call all the feed stores, call the farmers, and say, I can't buy your product, I can't get your compost, can't get your manure or your hay if it has that in it.
Now let's take it away from me. Is anybody else? Because I'm not. I mean, honestly, if I'm an expert at anything, it might be a benefit to all of us, myself included.
I'd say one thing on the leaves, because working with very little money, I use a lot of leaves, and I've always had the problem of blowing over any little. If you're doing any kind of if you're not doing big seedlings, if you're doing any kind of small crop like what we have over there, these will definitely blow over and kill a lot of your stuff. So the chopping with the mower, that's actually like our only piece of gas-powered equipment on the farm right now on the property is that, just so we can at least, because we have tons of leaves, we have tons of forest, and that's like my main carbon source. So I've found that I have to chop it up, or else it'll like, again, if you're doing a big seedling like you're talking about, that's not going to matter. They're not going to blow over that. But if you're doing like that kind of planting, it'll die.
If anybody has used it, but you can make those paper cups out of newspapers
Oh yeah.
and get that seedling started that way. You can plant that whole thing and it'll break down just like the cardboard does, and they just take off.
What about using
And that'll protect it, like you said, flipping seeds around. It'll help it establish.
feed sacks instead of cardboard?
Careful, because some of them got plastic on the inside of them. You got
You have to go through them, yeah.
Yeah, you got to check. Usually the outside, it's usually double
I
layered.
did it around some trees that I planted. The only thing I noticed was I think they're so much thinner you probably need to double them up because the cardboard is too layered.
Yeah, you can, like you said, you can add down a ton of, like where we live. Like, okay, let's talk about trees also, because this applies the same way. You see this time of year, folks, you can go through a neighborhood, you'll find bags of leaves laying out there and whatnot. Just like Greg Judy has been teaching for years and years and years, even Joel Salatin, Jeff Lawton, take somebody else's fertility and bring it to your place. Even if it's bags on the side of the road, this guy, he didn't know what was going on in Asheville. I was picking up something for Michelle, and I saw a whole line of bags out there, and well, I'll leave out part of the story, but anyway, I'm taking this trash and putting it in the back of my truck, and I'm sitting here doing this, and this guy's thinking, he must have thought I needed a meal or something, you know? I can see him in there like,
What's this homeless guy doing?
yeah, well, that happens all the time, believe it or not, when I go get food for my pigs and chickens, which I'm going to do when I get back today. Everybody thinks I'm homeless, and they have no idea that I'm not homeless.
Well, you never went over that either, so.
Okay, maybe I'll cover that too. But, hey, just to quote somebody, I'm not homeless, I'm home free.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, for real, you think about it. We're taking Darren. I learned a whole lot from him and Patty. Patty's an expert at canning and all kinds of good stuff. Darren can scrounge. Only one that might give you a run for your money is that guy right there. And I'm sure it's a number of other people, but think of some other carbon sources out there. Take somebody else's fertility. If you did nothing, go around your fruit trees. Don't worry about the how is it all the trees that you want? How is it all the trees you want don't just grow like the ones you don't want?
All right.
Take them leaves, pile them up 4 feet high around your fruit trees. Why not? Somebody else's fertility. Just try not to just mound everything up at the base. Anybody got anything else? Like I said, y'all, I'm not an expert at anything.
I just want to say, like, up in Jersey, people think that, oh, everything's organic. Nothing's organic. You can't get any kind of this stuff up there without spray. So we have family members who we know don't spray, who have ways to collect, like through usually a push lawnmower to bagger, and we just take their clippings, and that works great for us. And you know, there's leaves and sticks and all kinds of stuff mixed in there. And we thought, you know, the seed would be a problem, so we let it sit usually for a couple days, and then we put it down because it's nice and wet. Put it down, and we haven't had no problems. And we know there's nothing in it, which is our big deal.
That's the cool thing about leaves, y'all. It's got to think about how many toxins you put on the surface. Think about the taxonomy of soil. It rains. Let's say it puts that. It's only going to go. It can make it down to the water table, like where you live. I mean, you could have atrazine all the way plumb down to your water table if you ain't careful. So let's say the rain goes in. Think about the filtering system. It has to go through in that tree to get up to those leaves, and then fall back down again. That's why even in this world of high toxicity, like Bill Mullison, Jeff Lawton, leaves are your cleanest source. Like you said, nothing's truly organic these days. Leaves are about as close as you're ever going to get. Now, notwithstanding whatever's being sprayed on us and all that kind of stuff, but you know,
Yeah.
barium salt.